nation's adulation. I didn't go to school, I went to work. Eddie Rickenbacker's youth in Columbus, Ohio, provided few hints of the extraordinary path he would follow. In 1879, his father, William Rickenbacker, the last name contained the letter H until Eddie changed it later in life, joined tens of thousands of Europeans who sought a better life across the Atlantic than that offered by the hard-scrabble existence prevalent in their native countries. William said goodbye to family and friends in the small village of Zeglingen, Switzerland, nestled in the foothills of the Jura Mountains, determined to join his uncle in Columbus and begin work as a railroad laborer. 2 years later, Elizabeth Basler crossed the ocean from Switzerland to settle in the same city, where her 2 brothers resided. The confident, assertive woman, called Lizzie by everyone in Columbus, adapted quickly to her new surroundings, and 4 years after her arrival, she married William. Life with William, who waged a constant battle with financial problems, was never easy. The birth of their third of 8 children, Edward Vernon Rickenbacker, on October 8, 1890, added to William's burdens. Hampered by his inability to provide for the family, the father vented his rage by whipping the children for the slightest misdeeds. Eddie inherited his mother's grit, and before he was 5 years old, he was scouring the city streets for walnuts, rags, or pieces of coal that dropped from railroad cars as they rumbled by. He awoke before sunrise to walk 2 miles to collect the newspapers he would hawk for the Columbus Dispatch and to milk goats to sell to neighbors. Eddie could be counted on to help despite frequent mishaps, beginning with his being struck by a horse-drawn streetcar at the age of 4. He suffered only minor injuries, but more serious misadventures followed, such as the time he tumbled down a well, knocking himself out, or slipped from a tree, scarring his chin. Another time, he got his foot caught in some railroad tracks and watched in terror as a steam engine approached. Fortunately, his brother freed him just in time for the train to barrel past. At age 8, as he raced down a steep hill, his out-of-control cart flipped over on top of him and slashed his leg to the bone. He smoked when he was just 5 and organized a group of roguish youngsters known around the neighborhood as the Horsehead Gang, specializing more in fights and stealing cigarettes than in major crimes. Eddie lacked the comforts that kids from wealthier families took for granted, but his Columbus hardships honed an iron determination to outlast his foes and forged a foundation for his subsequent accomplishments. Eddie's life changed drastically on July 18, 1904, when his father suffered a fractured skull and lapsed into a coma after brawling with a fellow worker. When William Rickenbacker died the next month, the embarrassed son chose to suppress memories of the incident, and for decades, Eddie claimed that his father died when a large piece of timber smashed into his skull. The night following the funeral, 13-year-old Eddie awoke upon hearing noises from the kitchen. He walked in to find his sobbing mother, head in her hands, wondering how she, as the sole parent, would provide for the children. Eddie hugged Lizzie and vowed that he would take care of her and would never make her cry. He then stepped over to his father's chair at the head of the table and sat down as a sign that, henceforth, he was the man of the family. The next morning, instead of walking to school, the 7th grade student abandoned his education and traipsed out to find a job. Within hours, he started the first of his 6 nights a week, 12-hour shifts, earning $3.50 each week for his labors at the Federal Glass Company, even though he had to walk 4 miles to and from work. Eddie later claimed that the moment he handed his mother his first paycheck was the proudest day of his life. He added, "I changed from a boy to a man," and said that, "I didn't have to be told what we were up against. The day after my father's funeral, I didn't go to school, I went to work." Even though dropping out of school was then not uncommon, Eddie considered his lack of education an embarrassing deficiency. Fearing that people might try to take advantage of him, he masked his shortcomings by charging straight into matters before anyone had time to discover that he could not read or write as well as they could. Get out in front and drive like